All right. Well, welcome to the show today. My guest today is Yousof Ahmadzai, and I'm always blown away by stories where people climb out of adversity and do big things, which is why I'm really excited about this interview. Yousof came to Australia as a refugee from Afghanistan when he was 4 years old, and he went on to work in financial services, starting at the Commonwealth Bank, servicing the origination and maintenance needs of CommSec clients before founding Simplify Finance, which has been rated in the top 20 brokers out of 16,000 nationwide, writing over $100 million in settlements. And the thing that really impresses me about Yousof is just how well-rounded he is. You know, not only is he successful in career and business, but he's also committed to his health, personal relationships, and giving back with service to various causes, including the Rotary International Organisation, Conviction Group, United Nations Youth New South Wales, and more. So I want to bring Yousof on the show to find out more about his story, how he overcame such challenging circumstances, and how he's been able to rise up in business and life. So, Yousof, welcome to the show.
What an introduction. Thank you so much, James. Absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Happy to have you, man. For the first in-person podcast interview as well for the James Harrison
What a pleasure.
Show. So I love it. So I was hoping we could start a little bit about your background and your story. So can you maybe just tell us where you were born and I guess what early life was like for you?
Yeah, of course. So I was born in India, actually. My ethnicity is originally from Afghanistan. We had to move there because essentially, as most of you are aware of, there was a massive political uprising in the 1990s with the Taliban coming into power, destabilizing the government, and I myself have come from a very strong political family. And what happened essentially in 1996 was that my uncle and my father were captured by the Taliban and they were publicly executed in the middle of Kabul city.
It's insane.
It's insane, and it's later on you realize it's actually one of the best things that have happened in life. Because like we've said tonight before, out of adversity comes light. So out of that event, what's happened is my mum was able to move to India, which shares a very small border with Afghanistan, and that's where I was born. Lived there for a few years. I went to my early schooling there, and this is where I suppose the most pivotal moment for my mother came about, and that's when she made that decision to accept the fact that my child doesn't deserve to be in this current environment he's in, and if he's truly able to maximize the potential he has, we need to find another country where that's presented to him. So at the age of 27, my mum made that courageous, selfless, sacrificial decision to leave behind her mum and dad, her comfort zone, moving to a country where she has no money, no proficiency in English, no connections or social connections whatsoever. And the country which welcomed us with open arms was Australia. And my story in this country started at the age of 4, where I lived there for 3.5 years. And I hold Melbourne very close to my heart, which is where James is originally from. So we bonded like absolute crazy just because of that. And then moved to Sydney. So I came to this country as a refugee, but I've always felt like an Australian as well, as an Afghan.
I love that. And yeah, definitely keen to dive into more of what you've achieved since you got here to Australia. But I guess like, what was that like for you actually coming here? Because you just said you felt like an Australian. Is that, I guess you were young enough where you could feel like you weren't an outsider, I guess. Is that fair to say? Or
yeah, I think so, because I came here at the age of 4, which is still that period of time where you're just about to start school and you start building friendships with people. What I wasn't so sure about was the fact that when I'd go to school, the dynamics I had at home were different to what all my friends were like. They'd always talk about mum, dad, but for me it was just me and mum. And up until the age of 7, I actually didn't even know what had happened with my dad until I asked my mum one day, and she sat down and she told me everything that happened, and our originations as a family and the way they were killed and the gruesome manner in which it happened. And I actually saw it on the internet, the photos of it. I went and looked at it myself when I was at school. And that, for a child at the age of 7 to see that was absolutely shocking. And I still have visions of it right now. But at that point of time as a child, what it did to me was it really made me scared of people, because I'm like, how can people be so violent? How can people cause such terror and harm to others? And seeing my mum lose her husband and be separated from family, I think from early childhood, I was instilled with the notion of loss, suffering, trauma, fear. So I'd go to school and I'd find it really hard to connect with other people. So it was almost like you'd go to school and you'd be joking, but it was like a facade, and then you'd come home and you'd have this feeling of loss and suffering. And that was the majority of my early childhood.
So how did you start to, I guess, work through that? And I guess how did that actually manifest initially? Because you said that initially at the start of this interview that obviously good things can come from adversity, but how did that manifest initially? Like, how did you start to deal with that?
I think the way my life went after I moved to Sydney, did really well in school, was always good making friends in public school, high school. But it was only until, I suppose, the age of 16, 17, when I realized that mum's starting to age and get older, and she's put in the hard yards for me. I actually need to do something back now, because if I don't use this opportunity which she gave for me, she sacrificed essentially her entire life and comfort for me. It's a fucking crime, to be honest, if I don't. And I realized that, and for 3 days, I was probably in tears for 3 days straight, because I'm like, what do I do? I don't know what to do, but I just know I have to be successful, and I have to be successful not because of me, but I have to do it because for my mum and for her happiness and for her prosperity. I have to give back to my mum. And that's when things changed, because we spoke about this earlier, James, where your purpose in life becomes bigger than just you. It becomes about someone else or a cause outside of just you. That's when you're anchored towards something bigger, and on any rainy day or when shit hits the fan, you're able to push through anything. And it was at the age of 17 when that started for me, when I really started to immerse myself into the personal development sphere, started to dial into my studies, into my career. And one step at a time, slowly but surely, I was able to start seeing results in my life. And I'm very blessed and grateful today that I've achieved a lot of the things and exceeded a lot of the achievements I set out for myself 5 years ago. But I'm still a very long way away from where I want to be today, which is the paradox of life.
I love that. And it sounds like work ethic has always been pretty important to you. I read on your LinkedIn you had Domino's making that quick coin by providing the best delivery service the North Shore has ever seen.
Yeah.
So you kind of always took your role seriously, I guess.
Yeah, I did. Well, actually, do you know what? That was one of my favorite jobs ever, because you'd get a base pay. I think it was $21 at the time, which was really good at that point of time. But then you'd get tips as well for good service. And what I'd do is I'd always find a way to compliment the customer. So I'd drop a pizza off to their place, and then they'd have a really nice backyard or a front yard. I'd say, ma'am, I really admire the greenery of your front yard. She'd be like, thank you. Here's $5 tip. So I'd be bringing in like $35, $40 an hour, still in high school. And
that's good money.
Yeah, it was really, really fun. Really fun.
That's cool, man. I like that. So why did you decide to go into institutional finance once you did finish high school? What was the kind of thinking behind that?
Yeah, great question. So when I studied a Bachelor of Applied Finance and Economics at university, and the way that degree and curriculum was structured by the university was to really gear students to go down corporate finance, institutional banking, without you actually giving thought to the other streams that financial services may provide. So this whole time I'm at uni, and there's this massive hype about, the big four accounting firms, the big four banks. And going with that group think, I'm automatically telling myself, I want to be there. I want to be in that shine and glory of Commonwealth Bank or PwC or whatever it is. What I did was a bit different to most people. By my second year of uni, I actually realized that it's not the degree itself that's going to get you the results you want, because in this day and age, degrees can be outdated across most disciplines. It's just the truth, whether that's hard to admit or not. But I realized that what's really going to stand out is my ability to get involved in university, explore extracurriculars, develop my soft skills and interpersonal skills, And that's what's going to give me the competitive edge. And along that path, I actually started cold calling companies, and I cold called Human Resources in Commonwealth Bank. And I said, my name's Yousof. I'm in my 3rd year of university. This is what I'm studying. I'd love to set up a time for us to meet. And it worked.
Wow.
I went into the interview and it just seemed to align at that period of time. And what I noticed was at the same time, a lot of my peers in my cohort were applying for internships and cadetships and even grad programs. And a lot of these companies, they put massive application processes in place where it really undermines the confidence of students. You know, they'll get a 4.0 perfect grade point average, but they're still not able to then manifest that into the corporate sector or the professional services sector. And that affects their self-esteem. But we need to start thinking a bit outside of the box. What's one way I can still get to where I want to be that's not what everyone else does?
Yeah.
Because that's what shines out. And if an employer or a recruiter or a potential business partner sees that, they're like, this guy is a lateral thinker. He has foresight. I'd love to work with him or have him work for me.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Where did that come from? Being able to kind of not get sucked into the group think of what the normal path is and feeling like you need to go down that.
I think I've just been, ever since, again, I found that purpose in life, I always had this mentality, a really competitive mentality that I always wanted to be the best, and I would never give up, and I'd always find a way to get it. And that really, I think, taps into your creative juices. And if you're resourceful enough in a day and age like this, which there are no excuses not to be, then I think you'll find a way to do it.
Love it.
It's just about challenging the normal way of doing it and really taking a chance and listening to your self-dialogue and being like, you know what, maybe I can find another way to do this myself. And by doing that, you're giving yourself the opportunity and the freedom to be expressive and innovative in how you take action. So I was very blessed to get that opportunity.
I get it. So one thing I'm really curious about is because you had this extreme adversity and trauma as a child, and you were able to thrive in that, and it almost like propelled you in a way. So obviously a very hard circumstance, but like it has helped you in a way because it's propelled you and given you this drive and helped you find your purpose in your life, which has helped you with your work. But I'm curious, like someone like me or a lot of people, even in Australia, you know, like we haven't gone through any like crazy traumas, you know, there's everyday life stuff that people go through, but nothing like what you've been through. And I'm wondering, like, if we haven't had that trauma and that adversity, can we still get the same sort of benefits that you've gotten from that experience without having to go through that trauma? Is that something you've ever thought about, or do you think that's possible?
It is something I've thought about, James, and I've thought about it only very much recently. And that's because a lot of people have started coming up to me over the last, I'd say, 12 to 18 months saying, Yousof, I can't do, let's say, the things you're doing or have the drive or the ability to do 19, 20-hour work days. That's just not me, or I don't have that drive, or I don't have your story. And it just made me think this whole thing that's happened in my life has actually been really good for me because it's given me that leverage, that emotional leverage to use that pain from the past and healthily transmute that through my work, through wanting to build a form of legacy for my mum, for myself, for my future family, for my community, and on a very high macro level for the world, which is definitely something I want to keep doing as I grow older and older and develop in my own business. But for quote unquote the average person who maybe hasn't seen the severity of trauma that maybe someone like I've seen or someone else has seen, I think it's just about constantly finding ways to put yourself through uncomfortable situations and something I refer to as controlled pain environments. And you can only do this by constantly taking action. By always moving and taking action, you'll get yourself closer to what your calling is. But just by sitting at home and thinking, you're never going to find that. You got to keep moving, and then by getting outside, you'll build relationships with people. You might find a romantic partner, and then 10 months later, you'll have a shocking breakup that'll actually destroy you. And then from that pain or from that trauma, you actually rise up to a higher paradigm, and then that creates a new version of you. And now you're able to think about more opportunities. But it's just about moving, speaking to people, saying yes to opportunities, showing up. Showing up is so important. Sticking by your word. Motivation and inspiration is so overrated today. It's so easy just to watch a video or read a book and ride off that inspirational high for 24 hours. But for you to actually have that discipline and that willpower and resilience to constantly break through, not many people can do that. And I think the people that do that over a certain period of time see the results.
Yeah, I believe that. Sometimes it's just showing up every day, even when it's not easy.
Absolutely. And one of my favorite quotes, I don't know who said it. It's life is not about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning how to dance in the rain. So it's
I love that.
Yeah.
We'll credit that to Yousof 2019. I love it, man. So what, so you do speak about purpose a lot, and you found your purpose, which maybe, could you just define like what you see as your purpose in your life?
Absolutely.
You've kind of already said how you discovered it, but maybe just talk a bit about that. And then, yeah, maybe if you've got some tips on how people can start to actually find that for themselves, because I think it's something that a lot of people do struggle with. And you mentioned a few things before, but maybe if you could speak a bit more deeply about that.
Sure thing. For myself, and I'm very open about this, a lot of people don't like talking about their purpose, but for me, my purpose is to essentially use this framework I've been given in a country like Australia, that my mum has given to me, to return it back to her in the form of pushing her up towards happiness, prosperity, freedom, and giving her everything that she missed out on essentially for the first half of her life. And I can do that in certain forms and, giving her freedom and buy her materialistic things. But at the same time, her happiness is always going to be something she has to work on as well. So I've always tried to, be a good friend with her and advise her and spend quality time with her. One thing I noticed is if my purpose is my mum's happiness, it's also to speak, let's say, on stage and tell my story and what I've been doing and the contributions I have in society. By doing this, I'm able to impact hundreds and thousands of people, and hopefully one day I can do it on a global stage. And if I can do that and I can get my mum on stage, man, that thought just pushes me through anything during the day. I think when it comes to finding your purpose, a lot of people struggle with it, and that's okay. The best way, in my opinion, to find your purpose is to, firstly, isolate yourself. As soon as you leave the door in the morning, you go to work or you go to whatever commitments you have, you get swamped by the noise of routine, almost just being a battery in the matrix. And if you do that every single day consistently, you're just going to be a part of that entire group thing. And how are you actually going to be able to go inside yourself and really realize what resonates with you? So you have to isolate. When you isolate, that's when self-discovery happens. And through self-discovery, you're able to realize the skill sets which resonates with you, the passions you have. And then slowly but surely, now you know what type of people you want to be with, and you speak to those people, you take on board those opportunities, you try it. You'll probably fail, but now you know what not to do. Now you know what to do for next time, and you'll slowly figure it out.
Got it. So isolating yourself, and is that another way of saying providing, I guess, space for yourself to?
Absolutely, providing space, silence, and stillness. And I put a big emphasis on. It's something I still do today, and I've been doing this for the last 2 years consistently every single morning. The first thing I do is I don't wake up and look at my phone, because what that does is essentially it puts you in a state of reaction. You see all these notifications, Instagram, XYZ like your photo, email from the boss, alarm. So automatically you're just becoming reactive to these different sources. Turn the alarm off, put your phone away, get up and do a 10-minute meditation session and really trying to become present in the moment. And what the purpose of meditation or mindfulness meditation is that it really neutralizes your energy levels back to baseline. And you're meant to essentially not block out your thoughts, but just watch them float by, not judge them, but just feel them go by. And essentially what that does is you go to baseline, and now you're in a good state to push through for the rest of your day. So I do a 10-minute meditation session, and then I'll write down 10 things I'm grateful for every single morning. And I always say to my coaching clients, when you do this thing in the morning where you write 10 things you're grateful for, don't just write it down for the sake of writing 10 things you're grateful for, but actually really feel the gratitude when you write these things down. I'm grateful for having dinner tonight with Ryan and James. I'm grateful for the clothes I'm wearing. I'm grateful for having oxygen. Like, I'm grateful for the fact that I am paying taxes in a country like Australia, because if I'm paying taxes and bills, it means I have responsibility. If I have responsibility, it means I have rights. And if I have rights, it means I'm in a country where fucking 90% of people on the other side of the world would kill to be in here. So what I'm trying to get to with that is, in any situation where it's perceived as being negative, you can literally flip the script through a perspective shift and be like, fuck, there is a reason to be thankful for that as well.
Yeah.
And when you become grateful for the small things in life, which most aren't, you actually retrain your neural pathways into looking for more things to be grateful for.
Yeah.
And it's the most powerful force in the world, hand on heart. And when you have that in the morning, you just kill it throughout the day, moving forward.
Yeah.
Everything is positive.
Dude, I love that. It's retraining. It's absolutely, I couldn't agree more. You're retraining your brain to actually look for positive things in situations rather than the negatives. Because there's always positive, there's good and bad in any situation.
That's right.
But it's our perception of what that is.
Exactly.
That defines how we enjoy our lives, essentially.
100%. And that's a really good point you bring up. In the Eastern spiritual sphere, they talk about something called looking at life through duality, where things can be good, things can be bad, but we can't judge good and bad. We just have to observe both sides and then see what resonates with our value system and then keep going. A lot of the labels in society, for example, religions might say this is bad or this is good. And then what that does is it creates these divergences between people's behaviors and the things they do. But if you just look at it objectively and see, does this resonate with my value system or where I want to be? If not, then I won't do it. But if it does, then it could be a tool to help me get to something I want. So it's always good to look at both sides of the coin. And when you do that, you actually won't judge people as well for the decisions they make. You'll just be mindful and you'll be able to see their energy levels and be like, okay, I can get along with this person. They're going to help me and they're going to be good for my growth as well if they're on the same energetic frequency as me.
Yeah. Oh, so good. I love all that. And is there anything else you do in the morning? So writing down things you're grateful for, meditating, what else do you do?
Yeah, so the meditation and the gratitude, it really just recalibrates and recenters me from the day before. Whether, I had the best day of my life the night before or the worst day of my life, it just brings me back to baseline. After I do the gratitude, I'll make myself a green smoothie and a lemon water, which essentially alkalizes the blood and removes toxins from my body because I'm very big on health. And then I do the most fucked up thing you can do in humankind, and that is taking a cold shower. And I think James is the king of these.
Oh, yeah, I try to do them. They really work.
It's the most difficult thing to do, especially when you just woken up and you've only got 4 or 5 hours of sleep. But one thing I promise you, and I'm sure you've noticed this as well yourself, is that if you take that cold plunge, for the rest of the day, you'll do anything else. You will literally not bitch out of anything else throughout the day. Whether that's going to the gym or eating within your calories, you'll do every single thing because that willpower you had in doing that translates and builds momentum for every other task you have throughout the day. And then, so after the cold shower, I'll sit down and write down every single thing I need to do for that day and then rearrange the list into what's most important. Which one has the most labor, which one has the most mental labor as well. And then I'll do those ones first and then obviously do the more mundane tasks later on in the evening.
Yep, got it. How many hours of sleep are you getting at the moment?
It varies, although I'd probably say over the course of this year, it's probably been about five hours average.
That's insane.
Yeah.
It's funny. What's your opinion on that? Because we were sort of talking about it over dinner. Some people can sleep 8 or 9 hours and still feel tired.
Yeah.
But you seem to just be jumping out of bed every day on 5 hours. So
yeah.
What's the reason for that?
Yeah, I think we actually had a really good conversation on this earlier. And for me, myself, like I'm a sleepaholic. I could sleep 10 hours and still sleep more if I wanted to. But one thing I said to James, I said to you earlier was that if I sleep 5 hours and I've finished every single thing I needed to for the night before, I actually wake up with more energy and more happiness than if I were to get 7 hours of sleep and not finish everything I promised myself I'd finish. I'd wake up feeling defeated. I'd wake up feeling deflated, and I'd feel waking up with a loss of momentum. And I'd rather the former before that. And then Saturday, I'll have an extra few hours of sleep and catch up. At the same time, I think it is important to acknowledge that rest and sleep is a fundamental pillar of health, and that is something I definitely need to work on. And this entire hustle bustle culture, I think it really lacks the emphasis on health as well. And I think that's something that needs to be addressed in the personal development sphere as well. I think balance is very important. Although I do feel at times, especially being in your 20s, if there's any time to, smash your goals out of the park now's the time. And then we can recover for that a bit later on.
I get it. And I think for me personally, balance is probably one of my core values that I put a lot of weight on.
Yeah.
But the way I look at balance is that it's not necessarily every night getting a great night's sleep and then every day feeling balanced.
Yeah.
There might be like a 3-month period where you're fully out of balance because you're going hard on like trying to take advantage of an opportunity that's come up.
Yeah.
But then you sort of back it up with then a rest period after that.
That's right.
So overall, your life's balanced, but in the day to day, it might not be because, you're seeing all these opportunities and you want to execute on them and make stuff happen. So that's how I kind of look at it as well.
That's a really good perspective, actually.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So it's interesting. So what happened to you with, going back to your story a bit, when you were at Commonwealth Bank? So you eventually left there. So what happened there? What happened with that transition?
Yeah, good question. So myself, being so ambitious and driven throughout my teens and early 20s, I always knew I wanted to get into business and be self-employed and run my own show, build a team, build a legacy. That was always my dream. So, and I think it is for most people today. And it's really awesome to have the accessibility to do that today in the 21st century. Within Commonwealth Bank, I believe that I was there for 3 years and I learned so much there. I learned a lot of technical skills and foundational skills within the finance industry. A lot of people actually put down the whole 9-to-5 structure, or working in corporate, or going to a desk job. I'm a slave. I don't like being an employee or answering to someone else. And to be honest, man, I think that's absolute bullshit, because firstly, a lot of people that say this actually aren't even in that environment. And number two, it comes down to what I said before, and that's just shifting your perspective and shifting your paradigm into saying, okay, yes, I do want to get into business one day, but rather than trying to find a loophole or to work smart first, how about I spend a few years working hard, working my ass off, being an entrepreneur within a company, or being an entrepreneur within a company already, learning the skill sets, learning the different mindsets, disagreeing with 95% of the people in that company. So now when I do step out into that self-employed or entrepreneurial environment, I know how to run the game. I've seen different leadership structures. I've seen different processes and systems and structures. So now I've got more of an understanding. I've sharpened the axe rather than trying to build the axe.
I love that. That's definitely a Yousof original.
There'll be many more to come.
Oh yeah, I love that. And it's something a lot of people don't talk about, there is value, I think, in, because almost you're learning skills on someone else's dollar rather than having to, and you're going to do these fuck ups and these mistakes while you're working for someone.
Absolutely.
But it's on their dollar. You're getting paid to learn rather than making all these mistakes on your own and having to pay for it yourself.
Absolutely. And I think another thing that I'm very passionate about is, everyone's trying to make $1 million or $1 billion, but no one actually wants to make $100,000, $200,000. Even if you're in that environment, let's learn how to make that amount first, then the next one, and build slowly towards it. And, for some people it happens quicker, but I think, going through the motions and the steps and building something throughout that growth, I think you learn A, B, all the way through to Z. Yeah. And that's something I've seen with my 3 years in corporate, moving into business. And again, I'm very far away from where I want to be, but I've seen lots of success over the last 12, 18 months. And I've been very blessed because of my corporate job, my 9-to-5, the people I met there and the things I learned paved the way for that success.
It's amazing to hear that perspective, and makes a lot of sense. So what are you doing now, now that you've left Commonwealth Bank? What are your main projects at the moment?
So I'm doing 3 main things at the moment. The first one is I'm working as an independent mortgage broker for a company called Simplify Finance, and I'm running that with 2 other people. And like you said before, we're rated in the top 20 mortgage brokers in New South Wales. And we've only been in business for 27 months. So that's a very remarkable feat.
It's amazing.
And it just comes down to the fact that we're young, energetic, enthusiastic, and we're always trying to promote that friendly, approachable vibe rather than that sitting behind your desk, suited up, kind of that facade look. And I think that's really helped us as well.
It's
Working
the white sneakers, yeah?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm wearing a blazer and sneakers as well. So defying fashion trends, but always good to be authentic and congruent rather than riding with what the masses do. So there's my mortgage broking piece, and that really connects my three passions in life, which are people, property, and philanthropy. And James, I've grown up. Early of my life, I grew up in housing commission. So for myself, one of my biggest dreams was to have that huge house with mum in the future. And I realized everyone's complaining about the property market as I grew up and how hard it is as a first home buyer or as a millennial to get into the market. Again, let's change our perspective. How can I make this easier for myself? Think laterally. Okay, if I work in the industry and I help enough people to get the finance for their home, through the commissions I make from that, I'm going to be able to do the same thing now for myself. Through learning all these different scenarios of putting loans together and lodging different loan scenarios to the banks, now I know how to structure it for myself. So that's one of the reasons why I stepped into that industry, and I absolutely love it, because being able to speak to people, help people move into their home, see the smile on their face, and get paid good dollar for it, it's fucking crazy. It's so good.
It's so good.
Awesome.
I love it.
Carry on.
Just on that, on the mortgage broking, I'm just curious because why? So I'm just really curious because it sounds like something that could be a bit of a commodity, broking. Like you're essentially like a middleman in terms of bringing the right mortgage to the consumer who wants that, based on what's on offer from the different banks or lenders, whatever the case is. So I guess, have you managed to differentiate yourself from other brokers who are essentially in the same game, have access to, I guess, the same sort of products? Have you? What's your thoughts on that? How have you been able to do that?
Yeah, good question, James. So when I first started, I realized all of a sudden how many brokers there are. Just being on LinkedIn and changing my whole brand to a mortgage broker, I realized how many brokers there actually are. And I realized a lot of them are actually running a lot of numbers, a lot of sales, and their brands are huge. And I realized that, okay, well, obviously my brand isn't big enough to compete with that just yet. So what's one thing I have on them is the fact that I can think innovative and I'm more agile. And also, just because you don't have the biggest brand, if you're still the first person in front of the client or the customer, they're still going to use you. If you make that energetic first impression, show the enthusiasm, dress well, make the person feel good and trusted, they're going to pick you. And like, I made a stupid analogy for this. It's like if every girl, Ryan Gosling was here, of course a girl's going to go for Ryan Gosling. But because, Yousof was the first girl in front of her, the first guy in front of her, she's going to choose me. So it's almost like that. But then at the same time, when I started my mortgage broking, I was still working at the same time. So it wasn't like every single sale or every single call I was making, I was detached. I was super attached to it. So I'd be like, oh, I really want you to, go through me, and the banks are going to try to rip you off. Just use my service. Because when you come across as being very needy, a customer can pick up on that vibe. Yeah. This guy isn't doing right by me. He's just trying to make a buck off me. Yeah. So because I still had my steady cash flow coming in, I was still very much like, okay, deliver value to the client. And essentially, if the dynamic is right and the energy is right, they're going to use my service. Yeah. Slowly but surely, it took about 9-10 months. I did build a steady base of clients. They've come through referrals, forming business partnerships with McGrath Real Estate and a few other property buyers agencies, financial planners, accountants, really just using the power of people and networking to build my referral partnership. And I probably get about 15 to 20 leads now through my referral partners per week. Wow. And then you have family, friends, social networks, and that, it all helps. So the more people you speak to, the better you get at this game. Yeah. And more so than who you know, what's important is who knows you.
Yes. I love that.
Because at the end of the day, everyone needs a home loan. Everyone needs to buy a house. So people know Yousof is the mortgage broker. then there's no reason why they shouldn't come to me if I've done my job right.
I love that. I couldn't agree more with that. How important so it sounds like, I guess, people skills and building those relationships with people has been a pretty important part of building the business. Is that something you're always kind of naturally good at, or is that a skill you've had to develop?
That's the skill I've had to develop, and I've always been, I think, good at it. Although because of the things I've seen in my childhood, I did become very fearful of other people, like I mentioned a bit earlier. Until again, when I reached a certain age in my teenage years, I realized that, okay, I need to be able to connect with people now, because people can bring you the most problems in life, but they can also bring you the best pleasures in life as well, just if you know how to connect with them and how to give enough value for them. And one thing I spoke about earlier was that, everyone puts such a big emphasis today on technology or what application to be using or which social media platform to be marketing your brand on, which is great. And that's very important, especially being a professional or running your own business. But in my opinion, what's really going to shine within the next decade or 2 decades is the people who are able to connect and capture the attention through human interaction, or capturing the subjectivity of the human essence. So if I'm sitting and talking with someone, giving them my full attention, rather than, wandering eye contact or not actively listening or asking questions, I think those are the people that are going to shine. And in an industry where you can reflect those skills, it's sales and working in services. So that's where the mortgage broking is, and I'm very passionate about it. I'm also doing sales coaching as well as a secondary service within my business, and I'm doing corporate sales coaching as well, which I've just stepped into for another bank. I'm doing corporate sales coaching for them and teaching them how to balance smashing their KPI targets, but also how to fulfill genuine customer needs and wants rather than pushing their products forward all the time. I'm very passionate about social dynamics and social development. I think there's an interesting reference I'll make, and that's how to open people. I recently did a loan for a client of mine who I met in an elevator just by opening up a conversation with them.
Wow.
And that's crazy, because most people just sit on their phones, stand and look at their phones in an elevator, and it's this awkward silence. But I really remember being out of my comfort zone that day, just opened up a conversation with this person. And
good things happen.
Good things do happen. You do get rejected. People do give you weird looks sometimes, but I try myself to talk to 15 new people every single day.
Really?
That's a rule.
That's a ritual.
It's a ritual, and I track it on Excel, and it's fucked up, but it works.
That's amazing.
I put a big emphasis on talking to people.
Wow. I love that. It's hard to imagine that you weren't a natural with people. You're a very charismatic guy. So
I appreciate
it's hard
James.
to imagine. How long did it take you to kind of build up those skills?
I think it's a lifelong journey.
Yeah.
A lot of people say that to me, Yousof, you're so good at communicating, you're so good at social skills, and I believe I am really good. But it goes back to that thing we were talking about earlier, where the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. And there's so many different dynamics within understanding people and communication. I think it took me 6 or 7 years since my late teens to now to really get a level of mastery over it, when now I can attract people, whether that's in my personal life, romantic life, business, career life, and then sustain that relationship through building comfort. Because the way I think of a sustainable relationship is a seesaw. So you have it balancing as attraction and also comfort. If it's too much attraction, you can actually come across as being a bit arrogant. If it's too much comfort, people can actually walk all over you and screw you up, especially in business and romantic relationships. So we really want to assert that balance between the two.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's an interesting topic. Have you got any thoughts on how you can actually achieve that balance?
I think the best way to do it is to, when you speak to someone, be very direct, very authoritative, but very genuine as well. Give them a compliment. That's how you hook someone in. Put them into your social media, your Facebook, your Instagram, whatever platform you're on. At the same time, you're posting up all these photos and all these stories of how awesome your life is and how high energy you are. All of a sudden now, this person's like, who the hell is this guy? Like, he knows all these people. He's working on his business, his career. He's got a good social life. I want to be a part of that as well. And then you take him out. You guys go out. Now you build that comfort on a more personal level. And then you actually sustain that person in your life. Whether you catch up once a year, once a month, or they become, I don't know, your girlfriend or your business partner. I think social media's played a very big part in that.
Yeah.
Again, it just comes down to lead generation, lead conversion, and lead retention, whether that's business or normal life.
I love it. You're a good mixture of analytical and soft skills, I feel like, and I think that's a powerful combination.
It can also be very problematic as well.
In what way?
So I say I'm analytical, but I have soft skills, but I'm very analytical, but also very emotional as well. And if you think of a Venn diagram, there's a very small overlap or small amount of people that are super analytical, but super emotional. So for example, if I just come out of a breakup and I'm super emotional and I'm then analyzing every single detail of what happened, man, it's so difficult. But at the same time, it really creates this passageway. If you're going down business or you're going down wanting to contribute to something greater in society or you're volunteering, you're really able to look at things from a very lateral perspective and commercial minded way, but also with this altruistic intent behind you where you do want to help others. You can empathize and feel people's pain. And I think those two, it's unstoppable if you can cultivate that. And I think anyone can cultivate it. It just takes a bit of experience and the right life lessons.
Yeah, I believe that. And I really believe that is the combo that you want to get.
Absolutely.
Totally. So you mentioned just before about sort of giving back in service, and you've talked about how that was important in your purpose as well. So yeah, has that been a big part of your life, giving back in service? What does that mean to you?
Absolutely. I think one of the most important principles I follow in my life is that I've come to this country, I've been given the opportunity to, go through education, go through employment, build a business, make money, go traveling, make mates from this country, have awesome relationships. Why the fuck would I not give back? Like, that's honestly such a crime if I were not to do that. And I found that, especially earlier on in university, when I'd be volunteering a lot and being in social enterprises, this is where I'd actually meet very grounded and level-headed people in these different projects I was involved in. And it was through these people I actually came across my business partners for Simplify Finance. So when your intent is to give and give without the expectations of taking something, what tends to happen over time is that in another energetic form, you'll receive something. And the most important thing to realize with that is the fact that there's a season for sowing the seeds and there's a season for harvesting the reap. A lot of people will spend days, weeks, months, years, decades sowing the seeds, but they don't realize that when they harvest the reap, it could happen in one day, but that could be years and years ahead. And with myself, I've noticed that this year in particular, I've harvested the reap, but I sowed all the seeds in 2016 and 2017.
Yeah.
And everyone's, patting me on the back this year, but I pat myself on the back for those 2 years when I really hustled 2-3 times more than I have this year, if I'm being fully honest.
What were you doing in those years? Can you give us a rundown?
Yeah, so at that point, I was studying full-time. I was doing 4 units at uni. I was working 40 hours. I was building the Simplify Finance business with my partners as well. I was reading books, self-educating. I was still going to the gym. So I was all over it. But essentially, I'd be in the office until 3 a.m. every single night. Get home, sleep, wake up at 6:30, do the same thing, repeat. And those 2 years, I really, I went into a massive state of introspection and isolation, I'd even say. And I loved it because it really helped me to become congruent with my identity and where I was in life. And once that framework shifted into, say, let's 2018, when I did go full speed into my sales businesses, mortgage broking, coaching, I had the foundational work done. And now it's like I catapulted myself doing all the foundational work into the social development, the sales, and I was able to now let all that foundational work come about and express through being direct, assertive, authoritative with my clients, through my personal branding in the sphere of sales. Because you can come across as being ingenuine sometimes if you haven't done the foundational work in a field like sales. The last thing you want to do is be ingenuine with your service or your product. And customers are very good now these days at picking up on that. Simply through your energy, simply by your eye contact. If you've done the foundational work and you're congruent, your words, thoughts, and actions, I think that's how customers are able to build that trust to transact with you.
Yeah, agree. That's amazing, man. And so, yeah, reaping the rewards now in this year and continuing to plant seeds and many more big things to come, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And I think very important lesson there is to never get complacent with planting those seeds, because I think, yes, you can. And I've been guilty of this. You can get carried away with, the patting on the back and the comments on social media and, all the dollars coming in and your social status increasing and the quality of people you hang out with gets better. But at the same time, you always have to keep planting the seeds. You always have to pick up the telephone and make those calls. You always have to go to the gym, and you always have to keep grinding, because it never ends. The more you rise up in the game of life, the harder you have to keep going. Because when you reach a certain level, James, where people perceive you as being a person that contributes and a person they can look up to, especially being a business coach now, when you're viewed there, if you fall from that even a little bit, even the slightest amount, people will call you out for it. If people perceive you as being, let's say, somewhere very low, and all of a sudden you do one really good thing, it's blown out of proportion. Like, wow, this guy has such a big improvement. But if you're, let's say, somewhere really high and you just fall a little bit, people will pick up on that so fast. And, you see that on the media with, companies that do so much good, but then they'll have one trip up, which is like 0.01% of their activity. And then the news and the media will capitalize on that one thing they did wrong, and the whole world hates them. So it's really important to always maintain integrity despite whatever high you're on in life.
And you never want to take your foot off the gas.
That's exactly what I was saying. Yeah, absolutely. Well said.
Love it. So you asked, again, you're starting to reap some benefits this year in particular. And we're talking a bit about like wealth. And one thing you said that I thought was interesting is wealth is just energy. What does that mean?
The way I see it is, let's rephrase it from wanting to earn $1 million to impacting 1 million lives. When you shift your way of thinking to, I want to impact 1 million lives, all of a sudden you become more resourceful and you go out and meet the people, finding the pathways, the opportunities that actually in turn help you get to the dollars as well. Money is energy, because you have to feel like you already have the money. People think it's the money, the paper that they want, and they get so consumed with the chase of money or the pay rise that they forget it's not about the money itself. It's actually the feeling the money can bring you. It's about the freedom it can give you, the options it can bring to your life, the subtleties. You can pay for nicer organic foods that in turn translate to better health. It means you can take your mum or take your partner to a fancier dinner and put a smile on their face. It means that there's a bit more emotional, there's a bit more freedom in your mind, just that you don't have to always count every single thing you're doing. And your mind is decluttered. And there's no reason why you can't have all those feelings, again, if you practice gratitude right now. Because one thing I teach in my coaching business is that as soon as we turn 4 years old, we start going to school, and through the structures and constructs of capitalism and consumerism, we're told that you got to have this car to look this way. You got to have X amount of money to have this. You have to have this sort of house to have this lifestyle. So what happens is we go from childhood, adolescence, and our early adulthood, forming all these goals and ambitions based on I lack, I don't have, I want, I need. And we go through all the years going through school and working, building business, achieving all of these goals, and we actually get to that goal. We actually make the million, we get the car, we get the girls, whatever. But what's happened is over time, in psychology, they call it rewiring your neural pathways, neuroplasticity. And you've just trained your psychology the whole time, I don't have. So when you do make that money, all of a sudden now, you want $10 million. It's never enough. So I noticed that with myself, that every time, I'd achieve something, I'd never be happy until I started practicing the gratitude in the morning, where I said, I have everything I need right now. I'm happy right now. I am the wealthiest person right now. Like, you actually sometimes have to force yourself to feel that. And again, if you find 10 things you're grateful for every single day, you can cultivate the same feeling if you were making 200K a year. And now, because you put yourself on that energetic vibration, now you're able to bring in those experiences into your life. It does take time. It does take consistently taking action and executing on the things that you say you're going to do, but it does come.
Yeah.
And when you get to that goal now, through practicing gratitude, it's a bonus. And you relish it that much more because you were always grateful. But now you know the value of it so much more.
Yeah.
Always be content, but never be satisfied.
I love that. That's cool. Oh, man. It's so true. You have to... It's like money doesn't bring happiness. Happiness brings money. It's like the other way around to what most people think.
Absolutely. And money and success is not the prerequisite for happiness, but happiness is the prerequisite for money, success, anything else.
Yep.
Happiness is right now in the present moment,
Yes.
depending on your perspective on life. There's always something to be happy about and gratitude for.
Yep. Oh, man. I love that. Well, this has been an awesome interview so far. You've got a lot of great points.
Yeah, I'm loving it, man. This is excellent.
What I mean, we're sort of coming up on the end of the time here, but I guess is there any other sort of areas that I haven't asked you about that you think would be really valuable to talk to the audience about that you can think of? I think we've covered a lot, so.
Yeah, we have covered a lot. It's with these things, you just, when you talk about it the more and more, you just feel like there's so much more you can talk about.
Yeah.
I suppose for myself, I put a big emphasis, the recurring theme of this interview has been around people and really just talking to people and giving compliments and being genuine with other people and building relationships. And I think that's honestly what's given me success in my life, especially over the last year. Talk to as many people as you can, give value to other people, and that will return to you in a different form, someone else. But you'll never know what that is if you don't take the step yourself. Stop waiting to be the person to have something given to you or have a positive compliment being given to you. You be that person that compliments a stranger on the road. You be that person that makes a fucked up noise in the elevator with 5 people there. 3 of them won't acknowledge you. 1 person will be like, what the fuck? 1 person will be like laughing and be like, you're awesome. Say hi to that person. What's your name? Get them on social media and build that relationship. And then you bounce off from that person into 5 more people and then 10 more people. And this is something I actually haven't told too many people, but my goal is to meet every single person on this earth.
Wow.
So I've got a long way to go. But
do you have any idea what you're up to yet?
Hey?
Do you have any idea what you're up to already?
That's a secret. But it is my promise that I'll get there.
Wow.
Very shortly.
That's
So
amazing.
I think if you can help enough people get what they want in life, you'll get what you want in life as well, in the most selfless manner.
Love that, man. You got any favorite books or particular books that have had a big impact on your life?
I would say too many, man. I feel like you and I are like walking libraries.
It's true.
But if I were to really dial in onto a few of them, it would be the first one would be The Way of the Superior Man by David Data, which I know you love as well. Absolutely crucial book for every single young male to read, and I would even encourage females to read that book.
Yep.
Really talks about the masculine and feminine energy systems and how to translate that into your professional relationships, into your personal romantic relationships, and also how to live a balanced lifestyle as well. Yeah. Another really important book for myself and for a lot of other people, especially being in sales, is Power vs. Force by David Hawkins. Wow. And one of the really interesting things he talks about in this book is the scale of consciousness. Essentially, there's different emotions and feelings and paradigms which we're always in and fluctuating back and forth. So at the very bottom of the scale, you have feelings like fear, apathy, shame, guilt, very low level consciousness. And then on the highest spectrum of the scale, you have emotions and feelings like love, peace, enlightenment, awesome things. So when people say, when you're depressed, when you go through a breakup or you lose your job or there's been some massive worldwide event of terror, we're at the very bottom. And people around us will say things like, just be positive. You know, just go from here to here. Unfortunately, it's not a light switch. And what you learn in this book is the fact that you move up the scale towards neutrality. And to move up towards neutral, you just have to accept your current circumstance and become present. You accept and move towards this place of neutrality. And from there, now you're ready to propel yourself towards those higher states of being and thinking. And that's something that'll happen every single day on a micro level, and also in the bigger picture of life as well. As long as you're alive and breathing in oxygen, the worst days of your life are still ahead of you, but the best days are also ahead of your life. And again, going back to what I was speaking about, duality, they're both so beneficial to you. Because the bad and the adversity that life gives you, which I've seen in my own childhood, and everyone faces adversity in their life. I'm not saying that I'm better because I've seen really harsh and traumatic things in my life. Everyone's got their own story, and that's why I love talking to other people. But adversity, essentially, it deepens the roots. And a really awesome metaphor, which I love to say to people, is the height of any tree is always proportional to the depth of its roots. And the roots of a tree can only be built and ingrained through adversity. And
Wow.
when you do that, now the tree can just soar and rise to such new heights because the roots and foundation can hold that, hold the strength of it.
I love that.
At the same time, James, if you're the greatest oak tree in the middle of the forest, but no one knows about you, did it even matter? So we need to make sure that we're able to brand ourselves and position ourselves within our marketplace, within our niche, in a way where people are attracted and they feel comfort being around us. And that's something I translate in my career in business, and I coach people as well now, how to do that as well. Yep. Personal, professional.
I love it. So good, man. So what is coming up next for you? You've been doing a lot of reaping the past year. What's 2020 going to look like for you?
Yeah, 2020 is going to be the start of a new decade. Very excited. I am honestly the happiest I've been in my whole life. And, a lot of my friends are saying things like, we're getting old. We're 25 years old. And I'm like, dude, we are fucking young, man.
Oh my God.
We're living in Australia. It's 2020. Fuck, life is so good. But really, I'm just going to look to scale my numbers and my business as much as I can, putting a big emphasis on having fun. And I think that's something I've been doing a lot this year as well, just having fun and finding that balanced lifestyle, which is what you talk a lot about, James. And
how do you do that because you seem to do a lot of fun and crazy things, but then you're also working hard and, making moves. So how do you actually manage to balance those things? Because
I always find a way to connect the fun, the work, the ugly, the good, the bad, always back to my purpose. Again, if you find a way to connect the dots back to your overarching purpose, it all aligns in your life. So being in a sales-driven role, being around people all the time, I'm able to create a fun environment as well. Whereas beforehand, let's just say when you're in that kind of office structure, yes, you can still have fun, but it's not the same dynamic where you can express banter on an extroverted level. But for me, again, when I go out or when I go socialize with people, I don't view it as I'm wasting a day or I'm getting drunk or these things. I actually view it, okay, I'm sharpening the axe and improving my social skills. That's going to translate to my sales. That's going to translate to my numbers in business and me producing more relationships, which is going to be bringing me more results in my business, which helps me get to that purpose, giving back to mum, impacting more people on a global scale. And you can connect anything back to your purpose if you have that foresight and that lateral thinking.
Yeah, that's powerful. It all comes back to the purpose.
Yeah, and honestly, it has. I mean, whether that's just connecting people on social media platforms or meeting strangers, everyone serves their purpose in your life, and you serve your purpose in their life as well. As long as you're being genuine and doing your best to give value to that person, that's how you change the world. You just give value to one person, one at a time, and it's a domino effect.
Yeah. Amazing, man. So, 2 last questions. Is there anything I haven't asked you or just anything you want to make sure you pass on to the audience before we finish up?
Enjoy the process, because it's very cliche. Everyone talks about it, but honestly, every time I've reached a stage in my life where I've achieved a goal or something, it's not even that you're grateful. It's the actual process of everything, whether that was a month or whether that was 6 months getting into shape or 2 years building a sustainable business where you can scale it upwards now, you don't remember that moment where you realize it's happened. What you remember is all the nights you stayed up, all the nights where you were doubting yourself, but it actually happened. And it's the most humbling feeling to know that you grinded through that process and it actually manifested itself towards that goal, which you spent years and years and years building towards. Because the funny part is when you set goals, you actually reach that goal, but by the time you reach there, you already created another one. Yeah. So you don't even realize that you've achieved the goal. So it's always good as well to be retrospective and looking back at where you've come from and giving yourself a pat on the shoulder as well. Like, fuck yeah, man, I've hit some awesome goals this year. That's awesome. But not getting complacent and always being prospective as well and always pushing the bar higher.
Love it. Such good advice. What's the best way for people to connect with you, Yousof, if they want to check out what you're up to?
So you can connect with me on Instagram, which is Yousof, Yousof.orbion, Orbion. I'm sure James will put the tag down there somewhere. Mm-hmm. Or on Facebook, LinkedIn will be great.
Perfect. Well, Yousof, this was an amazing interview. We spent the whole evening together this evening. We went and got dinner with our friend Ryan, and it's fantastic to finally meet you in person. We've sort of been connecting online for the past, I think, year or so. So to finally meet was amazing, and you got great energy and you're doing big things and you got an amazing story. So thank you very much for coming and sharing.
Thank you so much for having me, man. It's been an absolute pleasure. And when you meet someone, you connect with someone on social media, you're actually like, is this person going to live up to that image or that projected image you have of them? And man, you've smashed it out of the ballpark. You're an absolute legend. So thanks for having me on the show, man.
Of course. Thank you again.
Thanks heaps.
Hey everyone. Thank you so much for listening to this interview with Yousof. Such an incredible story and so much value dropped in this interview. If you did get value from it, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave me a rating and a review in Apple Podcasts. That really helps me out more than you know, helps the show rank, helps more people discover these fascinating guests and their stories. And if you don't use Apple Podcasts, you can still help me out. Just take a screenshot of yourself listening to this interview, post that to Instagram stories, and make sure you tag me in that so I can reshare it. My handle's at jharris, which is JHARRISS. And if you do one of those two things, it would help me out a lot, and I really appreciate it. Have a good one.